Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name is Joe. Today we're going to be continuing our playthrough of In the Trenches Devil Dogs from Tiny Battle Publishing, designed by John Gorkowski. We are currently entering turn number 3. Now at the end of the previous video I kept referring to the turn that we were completing as turn 3, but that was actually turn number 2. So we are in turn 3 right now. And the first thing we do at the start of any turn is we've done the recovery phase, so everybody is in the correct situation, I would say, is one way to put it. Anyway, I did not combine these two because they weren't in the same hex, so I was unsure how that would actually work, whether I was supposed to just kind of move them to one hex and combine them or not. So for now I've left them as half platoons essentially, and I will move them together if I can this turn and combine them and the recovery phase at the end of turn 3, unless of course one of them ends up getting eliminated entirely. So the first thing we need to do at the start of any turn is roll for initiative, and again the white and black dice are the German dice and the blue and the red are the American dice. So we roll both sets here. So the Germans rolled a 2, which obviously is the worst you can roll. The Americans didn't roll very well either. They rolled a 4. So that gives us a spread of 2, and the spread is what determines how many orders the two sides get in this particular round. And we'll have rounds continuing with an initiative roll to start them until we've either exhausted all our units by making them spent, or both sides pass, or we roll a tie on our initiative roll. The only time the tie on an initiative roll won't end the turn is if it's the first round. So that obviously did not occur in this round. So we can begin with the Americans having initiative here, turn 3, round 1, and they have 2 orders. So if you didn't watch part 1, I would strongly suggest going back and watching part 1. I don't want to have to kind of explain everything again, since I already did that, and talking about the way the rounds work and initiative and formation activation, things like that. Kind of the basics are all covered in part 1. So please view part 1 if you have not done that already. This way you will be up to speed on the mechanics of the game as I go through and play this part. The first thing we'll need to do here is activate a unit. We have 2 orders. I can do a formation order with these 3, but that would not affect this one because it's not contiguous with the others. And that might be the way to go. It's kind of up in the air what the best move here would be. So I think what I might do is actually I am going to do I'm going to activate this unit here. So this half platoon, and just move them here. Okay. Since they're both half platoons, I'm just going to put them engaged on the one on the bottom. I mean, the counters are identical, so it doesn't matter. There's no first platoon, second platoon type of ID on these counters. There's just 4 platoons in each company. So that gets an engaged marker, and that's 1 order. Now the Germans can activate reaction fire, which they would do with their machine gun. And the range is only 1, 2, 3, 4. They're 4 hexes away. Again, they have the highest elevation because they're at the crest of Hill 142. So they are higher than all the other units on the map. They are, and the mortar as well. So they will activate their reaction fire. Did they get reduced? I don't think they actually got reduced. That's wrong. That should be a 6. So you take their 6, which is their firepower, you divide by 3 to get a 2. So that's their firepower modifier. And then you would take into account any defensive fire here, or cover rather, defensive cover, sorry. And there isn't any because they're in the open. So the modifier, and they also moved, so they get a +1 on their fire to cover that 1 unit. So their modifier is a 3, basically. So we roll the German dice. We get an 11, and that's going to eliminate this unit because it's already reduced. So it is eliminated, and we can remove that engaged marker since we don't need it. And I'm only going to apply that to that one unit because the other unit didn't move. So I would probably have to roll again, but I don't think they're eligible for reaction fire because only the one unit moved. So we're just going to call that done. They get marked as engaged, and they can continue to fire in reaction at any units that move for the remainder of the turn until they roll doubles, in which case they become spent and their turn is over. So that was one order spent. I'm going to spend the other order by activating this. Well, I'm going to spend my other order activating Company C, and I'm going to move them up. So they can move 2 because it's a formation activation, and their movement factor is 3. So we take 1 off. It's 2. So we go 1, 2. And 1, 2. We mark them as engaged. That ends the American side, and we would go to the German side now. And the Germans have 2 orders of their own that they can give because reaction fire does not count as an order. So they still have their 2 orders. They have these 2 units here, and they have 2 units here. So what we will do is we're actually going to pass. Now I could activate this. I could do a formation activation which would allow all of them to fire, and maybe I should do that actually. So yes, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a formation activation, and I'll fire these 2 units here which have a combined firepower of 7 plus the mortar. Machine gun won't fire. Well, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm thinking that they probably wouldn't. They're better off in reaction fire, to be honest, and maybe saving any actions for close combat should the Americans manage to get close enough to actually do it, which I don't think is actually possible in this turn, but we're going to avoid that possibility and leave these units open to reaction at least once, if not twice. So that having occurred, we then go and roll for initiative for the second round. The Germans rolled a 4. The Americans roll an 11. So that's a spread of 7. So the U.S. again has initiative, and they have a spread of 7. So they'll get 7 orders, and then the Germans will get 7 orders. So with that in mind, we're going to activate Company D. We're going to move 2, just like we did with C. We mark these guys as being engaged. That's one order. For order number 2, we will move this. We'll activate this half platoon, and we're going to move it up here in hopes of drawing reaction fire. Kind of a sacrificial lamb kind of situation here, to be honest, to be perfectly blunt. And what we're going to do then is have the Germans, obviously their machine gun will have some reaction fire here. So again, it's a 6 divided by 3 is 2. They moved, so they get a 1. It's a +3. They rolled a 7 plus 3 is 10, so they are eliminated. Basically what I'm hoping, or was hoping for there from the American side, was that the Germans would roll a double, which would remove their machine gun from action. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. It was kind of a calculated risk. That's 2 orders. My third order is going to be a formation. It's going to be activation of this unit, and we're just going to move 1 here to create a firing line with the other Company A. Now again, because they moved, the Germans can fire with reaction fire, and they will do so with the machine gun. And I think they could also do it with this unit as well, this stack here. That will increase them to being engaged, but it might be worthwhile to have a real shot at reducing this unit. So So they rolled a 5. Now, with just a machine gun, the +3 would be an 8, which is nothing. But since I did say I would do the 2 infantry platoons here as well, what that buys you is you've got 5 plus 2 is 7. Divide that by 3, it becomes 2. So that would add 2 more, which is enough to reduce and make the American retreat. So we put a spent marker on him. And that's our third order. So we have 4 left. And what shall we do? Okay, we're going to activate Company B. And we're going to move up. We'll move this stack first. And we need to put an engaged marker on this stack as they did fire. So the machine gun will again fire. We'll actually let the mortar fire as well. So we've got a 6 plus 5 is 11. Divided by 3 is 3 because you round down and drop the fraction. So that's 3 plus 1 is 4. So they get a +4. They rolled a 6, which is a 10, which means these guys get reduced and have to retreat. And though that's not ideal, they are now within range of this unit, which was part of my hope there, was to get some units in range so that I can shoot at them and maybe do some damage of my own. So that's 4 orders. Now we're down to 3. Oh wait, I needed to move this one as well. We're going to move this one up. Our mortar is now engaged as well. We still haven't rolled double, so the machine gun remains active. So now they'll shoot at this guy. Same thing, a +4 modifier. They rolled a 12. So these guys will also have to retreat and get reduced and marked as spent, which I neglected to do for the first unit. So I'm trying to get these guys close enough to fire at the Germans, and it's not working. That's 5. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to fire. I'm going to activate these guys for fire at long range. We have 10 and 10 is 20. You have that to 10. Divide that by 3 is 3. They're also firing uphill, which is a -1. So that becomes a 2. So they get a 2 modifier here firing at this hex. Whoops, wrong dice. We'll roll the American dice. They roll an 8 plus 2 is 10. So that's what they wanted. So that's going to eliminate this German platoon. And it's going to reduce this platoon and make them retreat. And they are now marked spent. So we finally, and I probably should have done that first. We finally get that in there. Now the machine gun can do reaction fire to the American fire. The range is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's the perfect range. So again, they get a +2 because it's 5. This guy is spent. I forgot. He's fired twice. He's spent. So the machine gun is going to fire. It's a 6 divided by 3 is 2. They don't get any bonus for movement, so it's just a 2. They rolled a 6, which is an 8, so no effect on this hex. We'll try this hex next. They roll a 7 plus 2, just makes them spent, which they already were anyway, so that's essentially no effect as well. Okay, so now obviously we have 2 orders left, I believe, for the Americans. 1, 2, 3, 4. These 2 are out of range. Yeah, they're out of range, so they can't hit any of the Germans yet. They need to move up a little further. So the only unit we have left that can do anything is this guy right here. And what he will do is... not sure I want him to do anything, to be honest. 1, 2, 3. He's going to... This is going to probably end up being nothing. Because if I divide it by 3, it becomes a 1. -1 for uphill is 0. Yeah, so he can't really fire because he's long range. He can't really fire at the machine gun. And if I move him up, then that's going to open him up to a +3 on the die roll for the Germans. You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to move here. and then here. And then if he has to retreat, I can retreat him to this hex. So now we roll the Germans. They get a +3 for their machine gun. They do get a 9, which becomes a 12. That's enough to reduce him. He has to retreat. He will retreat here, and we will have 1 platoon of Company A when we do our next turn. So now we have the German side. They have their machine gun, which is engaged. They have these 2 reduced squads here, which will be combined into 1 platoon or 2. Yeah, they're basically they're half platoons. They'll get combined into 1 full platoon during the recovery phase. So they haven't done anything yet. They're 2 away from this stack, so they may as well attack it. I only need 1 spent marker here. They're going to attack, so they have a firepower of 4, which divided by 3 is 1. They don't get any bonus for movement. They don't get any other bonuses at all. So that's just a +1 on their attack on this hex. And they rolled a 9, which is exactly what they needed. So that will actually eliminate these 2 American platoons there. So they will get an engaged marker. That's 1 order. We'll have the machine gun fire as well. 1, 2, 3. Again, it's 6 divided by 3 is 2, so they just get a +2 because there's no additional modifiers. They rolled a 9 as well. So, yeah, that's the way it goes, I guess. That is not good, but that is also pretty much the last thing the Germans will do on their turn, and so that's going to end this turn. So this is going to be the end of turn 3. Because nobody else can really do anything at this point. They could, in theory, fire, but it would be below 1, which makes it no effect. So essentially, we won't waste our time doing it. So that's going to end turn number 3. I'm going to pause, do recovery, and then we'll resume here. The recovery's done. We're now ready for turn number 4. Let me move my turn marker here. Okay, so we're now on turn number 4. We roll for initiative. The Americans roll a 4, and the Germans roll a 4. Now, typically, when you roll a tie, that would automatically end the turn. But because this is the first round, that does not apply. So we re-roll. This time, the Americans roll a 9, and the Germans roll an 11. So we get a +2 German initiative. A spread of 2, so 2 orders for the Germans. And what they will do is they're going to fire their machine gun and their mortar at this American unit right here. The range is 3. You get 11 divided by 3 is 3. They get no bonuses, but it's still a +3, which is pretty nice. And they roll a 9. +3 is 12. This guy gets reduced. Has to retreat. He'll retreat here, I guess. And he gets marked as spent. So both the machine gun and the mortar are now marked as engaged. Now the machine gun, when it's engaged, can still do reaction fire and does not become spent until it rolls doubles. So that's why that was worthwhile to do for the Germans. Now, at this point, we will hold off on... Actually, maybe we won't hold off. We're going to fire our mortar now, which has a range of 14. We're going to fire the mortar with our second order. Actually, you know what? We won't. We'll hold the mortar for reaction fire because we know these companies are going to have to move up and they're going to be subject to the bonus for moving. So we will now roll for, the Americans will now move, and they also have 2 orders. This guy's obviously spent, so he cannot do anything. So that means we're going to do a formation activation on Company C, move them up 2. Okay, so we move the first one. The Germans will react with the machine gun. They get a +3 modifier. He rolls a 9, +3. Okay, so those both get reduced and marked as spent. Now we'll move again, and this time I'm going to be a little smarter about this. I'm going to move one unit at a time. The whole formation's activated. You don't have to move them together. You can go 1, 2. The Germans will fire again. They rolled a 6 plus 3 is 9, so that's only going to make it spent. It won't reduce it. And then we'll move the other guy up to the same. Actually, he will move 1, 2. He'll move here. And we roll again for the machine gun. It rolled a 7 plus 1 is 10. So they're going to get spent and reduced. And actually, I'll move them. No, because they can't combine there. So we'll just do this. Spent. All right. So now we'll do the same with Company D, and I'm going to move them one at a time. 1, 2. We roll the Germans. He rolled an 8 plus 3. So they have to retreat and get reduced and spent. Second one, we'll move here as well. Rolled an 11. So the Germans continue to get big rolls on all their rolls almost. So again, that's spent and reduced. Now we'll move this platoon here. They rolled a 5 plus 3, finally no effect. So we'll move this one now as well to the same, actually not to the same spot. We'll move him here. So he's here, same thing. 7 plus 3 is 10. So they're going to get reduced and have to retreat and marked as spent. So that's going to basically end that. That's the 2 orders for the U.S. The Germans will fire their machine gun and their mortar at this unit because they can. They have 1 order left. So that's a 11 divided by 3 is 3, and they don't get any bonus, but it's still a plus 3. So they're rolling here. And they rolled a 7 plus 3 is 10, so they do succeed in reducing this guy. He'll move here with Company B and just be spent, and that will also mark these 2 guys as spent. And that ends the Germans' turn as well. So that ends the round. We roll for initiative. The Americans roll a 7. The Germans roll a 3. So that's a difference of 4. And the Americans get initiative. So let me do recovery because that ended the turn essentially. There's really nothing else that either side can do. The Americans would pass. The Germans would pass with these 2 because they can't really do much damage. So I'm going to do recovery, and then we'll pick up here in a second. So we are on to turn number 5. The Americans have initiative. They rolled a 7. The Germans rolled a 3. So they get 4 orders. They've really dwindled down. They've got 4 full-strength platoons and 2 half-strength platoons left. The Germans have 1 full-strength platoon, 1 half-strength platoon, and they also have a machine gun and a mortar. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we will activate Company C as a formation, and we're going to move this unit here up 1, and ultimately to here. Actually, no, to here. So that next turn, assuming they can survive this, they will have a chance to shoot at, to either close combat or at least shoot at some of these guys, right? So obviously we can do some reaction fire here. We're gonna do. I mean, the Germans at this point would probably throw the kitchen sink at them. They're gonna do both the mortar and the machine gun, which is 11 plus that is 16. You divide by 3, that's going to be a plus 5. They moved. It's ending up being a plus 6. Chances are this is going to be very, very bad for the Marines, but they have to take the shot. And it is. It's an 8, so they're going to be reduced and have to retreat, but they can retreat there. So they're not really far away. everybody gets, well, not everybody, that unit didn't fire, but they get an engaged on both of these. Okay, so our second order, and again, we have 4, will be to move this guy up. So they get a movement of 2, so they can really only move here. And we will use, well, actually, this is still the same one because we activated the entire company. So again, they're going to fire with just the machine gun this time. Well, the machine gun, we'll use the machine gun and the mortar because that seems to be sensible. So that's 11 plus, and they'll get a +1, but 11 divided by 3 ends up being a 3. +1 is 4. So they're going to have a +4 on this roll to attack this unit here. We roll an 8. So they're going to get reduced again and retreat. And this is the problem. The Americans cannot make any headway in getting to the hill. They're just getting decimated by this machine gun. So that will actually make the mortar spent, but the machine gun remains engaged. So our third and final unit from there is this half squad. We'll move him here. Hope he can survive the shot with the +3, which is a 7, and that becomes a 10. So he cannot. He's eliminated, and that ends the first action. So now we will move. We're going to move this. We're going to activate Company D. They can move 2, so we'll move like this with this guy. Again, we're going to roll for the machine gun's fire. And again, they roll really well, and they get spent and reduced. We just can't pull any low rolls. The Germans are rolling really well. So now we'll take the second one and try the same thing. We'll roll again. Again, they roll a 10. This is ridiculous. This is really ridiculous. And now we'll move this guy up as well. And again, he's probably just going to get eliminated. 7 + 3 is 10. He's eliminated. So I think it's become quite obvious that the Germans are going to win this scenario because the Americans just cannot get to the hill. That may be a tactical error on my part. Maybe I played some things wrong. But this machine gun is absolutely dominating this battle. Completely dominating it. So the Germans will use an order just to move this guy up. They'll make him engaged. And then they're going to pass. I mean, I don't know that it's worth it. I don't think he's going to be able to. Yeah, he wouldn't be able to actually fire for any kind of effect. Same thing over here. We're going to move this guy up right there, which makes him engaged. Now he can fire, so we're going to divide that by 3. It's going to be a 1, but actually, no, I'm sorry. We double it to a 10. Divide that by 3, which is a 3, because he's adjacent, so it doubles. But he's engaged, which halves it. So let me redo this. He moved, so that made him engaged. So now when he fires, his 10, which was doubled for being adjacent, gets halved back down to 5. You divide that by 3, it's 1. So they get a +1 on their roll. And again, they roll a 10. So that is going to eliminate that unit. And the Americans are really, really in trouble now. This is a pretty good demonstration of just how effective machine gun fire is and just how difficult it was to successfully attack an entrenched enemy during the First World War. So I guess kudos to John Gorkowski on the design here. Even though historically the Marines were successful in getting Hill 142, in this playthrough they're basically done. They're going to get wiped out. So that's going to end that round and the turn because this guy's actually spent. And I guess the machine gun could, in theory, fire at this unit, and maybe we might as well do that. So the range is only 3. That's well within range. It's a 6. It's engaged, which gets halved, so it's 3, and then it ends up being a +1. So they're going to get a +1, and since they rolled 10 on every single roll, this will probably eliminate this unit. Oh, they rolled a 9, which still becomes a 10, so yes, they do eliminate that unit. Okay, so we've got basically 1 platoon left for the Americans as we end this turn, so that would have made the machine gun spent as well. We're going to end the turn. I'll do the brief recovery phase here, and then we'll be back to do turn number 6 here in a second. Okay, so we'll do our initiative roll. The Americans roll a 7. The Germans also roll a 7. So again, we have tie. We have to re-roll. That's a 6. And that's also a 6. So again, we get a tie. 5, 9. So the Americans get initiative. They get 4 orders. They only have 1 unit. So since they have 1 unit, the first thing they're going to do is they are going to fire at this German unit. So they get a 5 divided by 3 becomes a 1. Actually, -1 for uphill becomes a 0. So that's actually not going to do them any good. So instead, what they're going to do is they're just going to move. They're going to move up into this hex because, well, no, they can't. They can move here. So they're now engaged. Now, of course, we can do reaction fire with the whole boat here because everybody's in range. So the Germans will, for reaction, will activate their whole kit and caboodle. So they get 7 plus 6 is 13 plus 5 is 18. Actually, this one gets doubled, so we would add 5 more. So that would be 23 divided by 3 is 7. Plus 1 for the move makes it an 8. So basically, unless the Germans roll, actually it doesn't even matter. Whatever the Germans roll, this is going to be a reduction. So yeah, it's an 8. If they had rolled a 2, it would still have been a 10. So they're going to get reduced, and they're going to be marked spent. That's going to be basically be all the Americans can do, so they have to pass. Now the Germans can fire. So everybody's engaged, obviously. So we're going to say all 3 units, all 3 of these units will fire to try and eliminate this unit and end the battle. So that's 6 and 5 is 11, plus 5 is 16. You have it because they're all engaged, so it becomes an 8. And then 8 divided by 3 leaves a 2. It's because you have to round down. So they get a +2 on the roll. So basically, if they roll an 8 or better, they eliminate this unit and it's done. And they rolled an 8. There you go. So that eliminates the last American unit. And this battle is done. And the Germans win. The Germans did quite well in that battle. They pretty much dominated it. Mostly thanks to their machine gun. So the mechanic that allows the machine gun to continue to fire until they roll doubles is really kind of a really big force multiplier that, if you continue to roll well, can really make things tough. The fact that the Americans really weren't able to get close enough to do anything, really made this hard. You need to get, I think that's true of a lot of war games, in that you need to roll well or have the opponent roll not well to really make some headway. And in this one, and this was true in the First World War, let's not forget that the reason that war was so static was because, with the trenches, during a bombardment by artillery, they could go into their dugouts. They would be relatively safe. The machine guns, once the infantry came out of the trenches and tried to cross no man's land, the machine gun dominated the battlefield, and it was just oftentimes a massacre. In the actual battle, I don't know specifically about this part, the Hill 142 part, but overall, in general, the American casualties, the Marine Corps casualties at Belleau Wood were approximately 50%. So it's not like it was a walkover. Yes, the Marine Corps did win. They took Hill 142. They pushed the Germans out of Belleau Wood. but they took horrendous casualties in doing so. So that's going to wrap this up. Obviously, the game is over. The Germans won. They did a good job. The only thing I wonder, and this could have been this would make a big difference, is in the initial round, because of the dugout rule. If you don't apply the dugout rule, if they had only been in the trench, their cover factor would have been a 3 instead of a 5, meaning that when you rolled a 4, 5, or 6, they would then be reduced and spent in turn 1. If I remember correctly, and I'd have to look at the video from the first part, I believe I rolled 4 at least twice. So that would have reduced and spent 2 of the units. As it was, nobody took damage. I didn't roll a single 6. Nobody took damage. Obviously, if your artillery can make a little hay and do some damage on that first turn, things get a lot easier, particularly if you can reduce or damage the machine gun and the mortar, because these two guys, the mortar's range makes it incredibly powerful, and the machine gun's ability, plus it's got a 6 firepower, but its ability to continue to fire over and over and over again in reaction makes it extremely hard for the Americans to get to the hill. And if they can't get onto the hill where they can do close combat, or at least get to the hill in shape where they can do some firing as a formation to hit the Germans, their road is extremely difficult. Now, I could probably mess this up somewhat. There may be somebody who watches this who's a little bit more of an expert on this game that would say, hey, you should have done X, Y, and Z, and you would have had a better outcome on the American side. That may be true. I'm not sure. I know ideally, right, you would get, say you had your company A and you were able to get them reasonably close, something along these lines, right, where these two guys, where you can activate the whole formation, which is 15 firepower, and you get to double these two because they're adjacent, right? So you get 10, 20, 5, hitting this one hex. Then you have a chance to do some damage, knock them out, get up onto the hill. But to do that, you have to be able to get this guy to stop rolling 10s and blowing your units away over and over and over again. And that's exactly what happened in this mission. So, good game. Tough game from the American standpoint, at least in this particular play. The Americans had a very hard time. I rolled very well for the German side. They did an incredible amount of damage, and that was the difference. The machine gun was absolutely the difference in this mission. So to recap, this is a good system. I would strongly suggest playing. If you pick it up, play all 3 of the different operations, because they're varied and they're good. I myself plan on buying the rest of the series. I think it gives you a good, solid look at a lot of the war. I believe the earliest operations go back into maybe 1916 at the Somme. There's also some Japanese stuff in the Pacific, fighting, taking some of the German islands that German colonial islands in the Pacific that became part of the Japanese Empire that the Americans then had to attack during World War II. But yeah, I mean, and to me, this is fascinating because this series covers the 5th Marines and the 6th Marines, this particular game, I should say, not the series, in World War I. And both those regiments played a big part in the Second World War. The 5th Marines were a part of the 1st Marine Division. They fought at Guadalcanal and Peleliu and Okinawa. And the 6th Marine Regiment, I believe, was part of the 2nd Division. So they fought at like Saipan, Tarawa, and so on and so forth. So some very interesting stuff here. So I will wrap this up. I've been rambling on for a while. If you've made it all the way to this point in the video, I applaud your ability to stick it out. And I thank you for watching. As always, I appreciate it. Please like, share, and subscribe if you would. And for now, this is Hext Encountered. I'm Joe. Thanks for watching, and happy gaming.